Good evening, church. I will be reading the fourth word, which is the word of despair. It is taken from Matthew chapter 27, verse 46, or Mark chapter 15, verse 34. And it reads as follows. My God, why hast thou forsaken me? May the Lord have blessing to the reading of his holy word.
There is no novel sad enough. There is no myth fantastic enough. There is no memory vivid enough. There is no script that's written perfect enough to contain a line, a quote, a cry, a sentence, a phrase, a declaration, imperative, or exclamation as desolate, as despairing, as the one which I have the great misfortune of wrestling with tonight. Well. The scene has already been made clear. My very capable and astute colleagues on the pulpit tonight. There's a brother hanging from, for all intents and purposes, a poplar tree. He's been beaten, bloodied, bruised, battered. Blood is streaking down his head. It's moving down his body into open wounds. And it streaks down to his legs, which are weak, legs which brought him from Bethlehem to Nazareth to Cana to Bethany to Galilee to Jericho to Jerusalem. And at one time, even brought him across the water. He's trying to lift himself up to breathe. And he's finding it difficult. Breath, which once proclaimed, Lazarus, come forth. Yes. Breath, which once said, Our Father who art in heaven. Yes. Breath, which once said, Get up off your mat and walk. Breath, which once said, Open your eyes and see. Yes. Breath, which said that your faith has made you well. Breath which said, Go your way and sin no more. Unceasing are the torments on his body. And nearly all of us here will have the privilege of never experiencing the physical torment that Jesus went through that night, that day. And in spite of all of this, this isn't what makes him cry out. Most of us here have lived long enough to understand the saying that the scars you can't see are the ones which are the hardest to heal. And so despite the nails being in his hands and his feet, that's not what's bothering him. What's bothering Jesus is that every time he lifts himself up to look out on the field, he sees that not the masses that followed him into Jerusalem just a few days before there, not even his friends, his associates, his bandwagoners are there to comfort him when he needs it the most. Even his mother can't comfort him when he needs it. The only people there who are with him in the end are his enemies. And so he's suffering from emotional, spiritual, psychological torment. And it's in this context that Jesus cries out, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani, which is translated for those whose native tongue this is not, my God, where the hell are you? reading that. I'm reading that from the New Revised Segun version. It's coming out in a couple weeks, 6th edition. But in spite of the shock value, I'm not sure that there's anybody in all of Christendom, save 2 or 3 who may be here, that would have a problem with me making his misery a bit more realistic. The reason for this is because there are some of us who will admit, some of us heathens who will admit that there have been a few times in our life that we ourselves have made such a cry, sometimes with more colorful language. And why is the reason for this? What is it? Well, I said a few weeks ago that the reason why some of us say things like this is because we treat Christianity like an insurance company. And so when we get in trouble, when we want God to step in for us, we realize that it's not going the way we want it. So we cry out, well, God, I went to church. I paid my tithes. I prayed. I fasted. I gave money to that homeless guy that one time. Why didn't you come when I wanted you to? And so we feel abandoned, and thoughts like this usually lead this sermon, or usually lead to 2 different sermons. I've heard this text preached many times over the years, and it's only been preached 2 ways. The first way rejects even the notion that there's a question mark at the end of this statement. It says, well, Jesus wasn't questioning God. He was in all of the misery, that Jesus was really trying to teach us something. And so even though he was messed up psychologically, he was still able to go back to David and bring up a psalm and try to teach folk who were there that even though he felt abandoned, that God would have the victory. And undoubtedly these sermons end up at Easter. And that's fine. That's a great sermon. It's been preached wonderfully before. And then there's another type of sermon where they say, well, yes, Jesus did question God, but it's only because it was the fully human Jesus. That wasn't divine Jesus. It was fully human Jesus, and he felt abandoned by God. He had the weight of the world, the sins of the world on his shoulders, and he felt abandoned. And so, yes, he did question God, but there was still victory in the end. And I hope it's apparent that I'm not preaching either one of these sermons tonight. Because unfortunately, I cannot act as if I was at the cross that night. I wasn't standing there. I didn't say to Jesus, well, I work for the Boston Globe, and I need my readers to be able to understand why you said this. And so we have to go a completely different route. I can only say what I believe this scripture means for us today. And in order to do that, all of us here have to, for a moment, a brief moment, pretend that we're God. I heard someone say just now that shouldn't be difficult for some, but just for a few moments, I want us to be able to think or pretend that we are God. And why I want us to do this is because there are many in this world who also feel forsaken. And sometimes, as the only representative of God that people will ever meet in their lives, we wind up forsaking them. So there are those in this world who are suffering, who are dejected, who daily say to God, why have you forsaken me? But they're not talking to God, they're talking to us who call ourselves Christians. And I can't name all of them, but a few come to mind. Half the population of this country asks us why we have forsaken them. I once heard, it has nothing to do, but I heard once before someone say that, yes, women may have been made second, but you have to create a rough draft before you create the masterpiece. And so there are times, I agree with that statement, but there are times that we wind up mistreating the masterpiece. Women wonder why they cannot make the church a safe haven from the hell of the world. They wonder why they can't escape the sexism, the chauvinism of the world when they come to the church. They wonder why they make up 80% of the congregation and only 20% of the leadership. Women wonder why they can't come to a safe haven in the church to run from abusive husbands, spouses, or loved ones. And even further, the younger girls who may not meet the qualifications of the church family, who find themselves pushed out of the church into the arms of some irresponsible boy. You find that when they return to the church, that every month as their belly grows bigger, the church family grows more distant. Young girls who are looked at as if they are not growing a child in their belly, but sin and shame. Women wonder why, instead of the men of the church praying over them, the men pray on them. In this manner, we have forsaken women. And then I can think of a young boy in Atlanta. And we read stories about things like this. I can imagine a young boy who's not sure whether or not he can identify himself as gay. But not because he doesn't know how he feels, but because he doesn't want to be condemned by his family, church or blood. And he's finding it increasingly difficult to stay in this world, to deal with the difficulties of feeling ashamed or being made to feel ashamed. And as he ties up that rope, and as he puts that rope on the banister, before I can go tell him not to do what he's about to do, I can only look at that note on his desk, which says, "My family, my church, my God, why have you forsaken me?" And then we don't even need any of these stories to see how we have forsaken others, because there are people in the very church alone who have their own stories of feeling forsaken. Some of us may wonder who are suffering financially or medically or psychologically or legally or educationally, wondering why we go to a church that has doctors and lawyers and teachers and therapists and stockbrokers and tax specialists, and the only thing they offer are prayers but never solutions. We wonder why we can be in this situation, but they only try to give us a hello and not help. Now, there are some here who may say, "Well, you're out your mind. I'm not God. It's not up to me to help those people. Look at me, I've got my own stuff that I'm dealing with. I have my own medical issues, my own financial issues to be able to help out these people who are suffering." But I, for some reason, when I was flipping through the scriptures, don't remember reading Jesus saying, "My shoulders are too heavy, I can't bear your burden." I don't remember reading in the scriptures Jesus saying, "My legs are too tired, I can't walk with you." I don't remember reading in the scriptures Jesus saying, "It's too hard to breathe, I can't tell you that everything is going to be all right." And so there are those Christians who look for us to say this, who look for us to help them in their time of trouble. Because I remember reading somewhere that whatever you do for the least of these, you also did for me. And so we must realize that we didn't sign up for an insurance company. We signed up for a job. And signing up for a job means that you have a duty. It means that you have a responsibility. But too many of us became Christians because we want our own lives to shape out and be perfect. And I'm still looking for the Christian who's ever met that obligation. And so tonight, I find it fitting that my last sermon from this pulpit should be on this night and on this subject. because it forces me to stop talking about it and to be more about walking it. Now, this question cannot ever be answered by me alone. This question weighs on the hearts and the minds and the spirits of every Christian in the world. So no preacher can consciously stand and tell you that this is what Jesus meant, because you must provide the answer. And so let us not forsake Jesus tonight. Let us not be guilty of forsaking the one that we call Christ by forsaking the ones that we call brothers and sisters. God bless you on your journey as you attempt to answer this question. Good night.